Okay, welcome everyone to the September 26th OMR Architecture Meeting. We've got a few topics to go through today. To begin with, Erwin will take us through the latest on the compiler code formatting topic. So I'll turn it over to him.
A very short thing I have is more just the issue was first opened up on August 2nd, and then I did, based on people's feedback, I actually went through the client format documentation, tried to see what all the different configs are in that config file, and then added stuff based on what people had said, and then reformatted the code, and then the branch put it up there for people to look at. And that was on August 13th, so I figure it's been a month and a half. And so really I'm just trying to see if there hasn't been any further objections, or not objections, they weren't to begin with. Any further thoughts and discussions on it? So I'm just sort of curious as to, are we sort of good to now start going forward? Because it's going to be quite a few steps. Like, first step is, for example, at least installing client format on the machine that runs the Azure test or whatever runs the line endings test. And it's just I added the Groovy script, the addition of the Groovy script and the issue. So it would just be the machine would need to have client format and the version of client format that we agree on. So the one I downloaded for the update in the issue on August 13th was, I think, client format 18 point something, whatever.
Right.
From what I'd read online, it is never a growing superset. Every time you have a new version, sometimes there can be mismatches in versions. So we have to just pick a client format version, and everyone has to just use that basically till the end of time. Because even when you update the client format tool, sometimes you use the same config file, sometimes they can have slight changes in the way it formats the code, from what I'd read online. So that's just sort of a logistics. Sorry, people are just coming in. That's just a logistics thing to address. But because there's a bunch of steps to deal with, I sort of want to know, are we good to go forward or not? It's not going to be something that the code's not going to get formatted next week. It's going to be a bunch of setup before we can even finally go ahead and push the commits. So that's sort of what I wanted to bring up.
Okay, so I don't quite understand the reason. So once you've picked a client format, you have to stick with it? What, can you go through that again?
From what I'd read online of people's experiences with client format, it doesn't, let's just say you go from client format 18 to client 20 or something, yeah. If you ran the tool on the same piece of code, there might be slight variances, apparently, in the way it formats the code. I don't know why. It just, apparently this is the thing.
Even with the same rules defined.
Supposedly. I haven't gone and actually, vetted this and tried it out and stuff like that. I just picked the most recent stable Clang version. Okay. Now, it doesn't matter too much. Like, you run Clang, and that should be it, unless there's some kind of security bug or something. That I can't imagine what. But for the most part, if you pick a tool version for the purposes we're using it for, which is a linter, I don't think it matters if there's newer versions of Clang. I don't think we need to necessarily upgrade it.
Yeah, but I mean, if the language evolves, for example, not that we jump on the latest language features, but C++ evolves, and there's things that we wanted to be able to format from that.
I mean, I think that's a problem we can address when we get there. First, we need to actually start using newer language features. Right? So until we're actually at a point where we're using newer features quite extensively, that's not a problem we need to think about. Because it's just like, it's not a problem we have for our code base right now. So,
okay. So back to your sample repo.
Sorry, I just wanted to say about the Clang format versioning that do we have an indication of or some idea of how much or how common or rare it would be for the same code to be formatted differently
No, I don't.
by a different version?
I just did like a forum where people had been talking about different formatters, and Clang format is sort of one of the bigger, well-known ones.
Okay.
I think Erwin's regretting he even mentioned it.
I mean, like,
Because,
it's one of those things where like we don't want to be in a situation where the linter complains. People are saying, "Oh, well, I ran the linter on my local machine." It's better everyone knows about it, right?
Right,
And then everyone
right.
agrees.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense to be on the same version. I guess all I'm thinking is that if like if the differences aren't in common situations, then there might not be that many actual changes. Like, say, if we reformatted the whole code base and upgraded, upgrade from this Clang format version to the next one in the future, it's possible that reformatting the code base doesn't change very much, in which case we could just do a formatting commit and say, okay, well, now we're moving to the next version.
Yeah,
That's true. That's fair.
yeah, I would expect it would be minor anyway. And
Yeah.
again, like you said, we'll deal with the problem when if it ever happens. The main thing is to get.
Would it be worth it to try it out on a couple of existing versions?
I mean,
like
I
two or
can-
three
I can
existing
try it
versions
out
to see
and then-
whether.
And then try and do a diff or something and see if there's anything significant. Like maybe do 18 and Clang 17 and Clang 16. Although the only problem is the rule set I'm using. I'd have to go check if some of those keywords are even understood by previous versions of Clang. In which case, I'm changing the rules a bit, right? It's almost like we'd have to wait until a newer version of Clang to try it out and see what happens. But I mean, like Devin said, maybe that's not a problem. Maybe a newer version of Clang comes, like a major version of Clang format comes out. We just try it out and see what happens. If it's significant, we say, well, do we want to do this? Do we want another format? If it's not, then
Yeah, I would be okay with just pushing the problem down the road.
yeah, that's what I figure. It's sort of a minor problem to have.
So back to the sample repo that you created. And you said you went through all the various rules that you could format. Did you assign a choice to all those rules, or did some of those rules you just left the default, whatever it
I
happened
think I
to be?
assigned it to almost everything I could. There are some where I think it required, well, some didn't apply.
Okay.
But I definitely added to whatever Robert had put in the beginning, his set of rules. It was an older Clang format anyways. I just sort of went through, saw things that were not part of that rule set, just added them to what the default value is because it made sense. And I just put that there and then put the code out there. There's some where I didn't put, for example, add braces, like it's not technically safe. Where if you have an if-else, Clang can add the braces, but they put a warning there saying, by the way, this may break code because it's not guaranteed to be functionally correct or functionally equivalent.
Because you're introducing a new scope now?
Something about they can't guarantee it.
Okay.
That part surprises me. If it's changing the semantics of a piece of code or expression, I don't think we should let it do that.
Yeah, no, it's
I mean,
not. I'm saying that like
if
I
there
didn't add that.
parentheses missing based on the relative precedence of operators, then it's clear where they were implied, and adding them explicitly should be fine as long as they're where they were implied, not somewhere else. And so are you saying they might put them somewhere where they weren't implied?
I think that they're saying that they can't guarantee it'll be functionally equivalent. They're saying it. So I did not allow braces to be added because they're basically saying.
We're talking about curly braces around, say, conditionals or loops,
Yeah.
not parentheses.
Sorry, braces, not parentheses?
Yes.
Is it- Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, I can get how that might be more challenging for it to guarantee, but, all right, so you just said, you're not allowed to do that, and so this issue doesn't apply, is that where we are?
I think the default is for it to not do it. You can add it if you wanted to, but they have a warning saying only do this on specific bits of code and please vet it. No one's vetting a big code format change like this, so it's better not to do it.
Did you
Right.
add the right margin? What did you set that at?
I think I left it as the same because I think I had asked you for clarification on where this inconsistency was, but you never gave me an example. But
Sorry.
essentially, like there is the rules say that the comments will stop at a certain point. It just so happens that if your starting point of your comment is somewhere else, it's not going to move them all to one place. It will for sure end at the rightmost column at whatever column limit you set. Like this, I think it was set to 120, which is what Robert had put, and it looks reasonable. It'll always wrap around at 120, at column 120. So it'll always be for sure right justified, I believe. But your column, your comment width depends on where in your start column is. So I wasn't sure what you meant by everything the system there, but from what I could read about the comment limit.
I think the comment, if I remember correctly, my comment was more around, it does depend on what the actual setting, I didn't know it was 120. So I thought it was going to be something like 80, something like that. But if it was.
Good. Apparently Robert had a justification saying why he chose 120.
Right, but so what I was seeing was that there were some situations where we had code that I thought should have been wrapped or whatever, and it wasn't. And probably because it didn't meet the 120 character threshold. So
code will not be wrapped, I think.
these are comments I'm talking about.
Comments, yeah. I think it'll wrap some code depending on your conditional. I think if you had a really long line, like a big long, I don't think it'll still try and wrap, for example, strings. I don't think it tries to do that. Some of it still requires manual. Like let's just say you have a big long string, it's not going to break up the strings for you, I think.
Okay. So I would imagine that the reason you probably haven't heard any feedback in the last 6 weeks is because people haven't been looking at it in 6 weeks. So I don't know maybe what are your next steps here then? If assuming that everyone is okay with this and the formatting is, what are your next steps to put the infrastructure in place to make this happen?
First step would be, agree on the version that we're going to do. Let's just say the latest stable version. Get that installed on the machine that runs the line formatting script. Don't have it be active, but it's installed install client format on there. And then it would just be a matter of doing the change because the Groovy script is in the repo of OMR. So like adding the linter would just be part of the PR where you're adding the format. You have to do it in one step. And then as part of that PR, like I already wrote scripts to help people rebase. Like it'll automatically rebase your stuff for you.
So okay, so the idea here is once a format has been chosen, reformat the code base and deliver that presumably as one commit. And then you have a CI job that runs, like the line endings check, that will run client formatter on just the changes in your commit. And then if there is a discrepancy from the established format, it's going to return that as an error, like the current.
It basically had to be. It's almost exactly the same.
So that job would fail in the check-in.
It's almost exactly the same thing as I haven't been able to run it obviously because I actually put it in for it, but it's almost exactly the same code as the line ending format check. The only difference is instead of the place where you check the line ending, you just say client format and the diff better be 0. Like you do client format and the get diff better be 0 or null. It should be git if show nothing, and then that means that you did it right.
Okay. So, right, okay.
And then the rebase helper I wrote is for once this gets in, and people have, let's just say, 5 commits that they need to rebase on the master, that'll for sure now fail. I wrote a little script that basically you just tell it how many commits back you want to go. It just goes and applies clang format to each commit, and then auto squashes it and then rebases it on top. Which I put that script on the issue as well. So you just run rebase helper and you're good.
So developers should be encouraged to install clang format on their own.
They'll have to do it at least for the first time they rebase. If they don't want to do it afterwards and they want to do it manually, that's fine. But unless they want to manually rebase their changes, you should probably just install clang format and run the script.
All right. I'll let other people jump in if they have any other comments on this, but what I would say is that we give people a grace period of like at least a week, now that we've reminded them of the fact that this is something that we're likely to do. Give people a grace period to look at what you've done and offer any feedback. And after that point, if there's nothing to be addressed, then we can proceed to the next step. But pause here now. If anybody has any thoughts about this issue, please raise any concerns you have. Kevin, I don't want to pick on you, but because you're a little bit unique in this group, do you have any opinions on this one way or the other? Is this something we can go ahead with?
I think it's fine. Yeah, I think this it seems like a good thing to have in the code base, and it's not gonna disrupt anything as far as our project connecting to it goes. So it's all good.
Okay, great.
Oh, one other thing I should mention is that part of this, we also need to. There's also another script that fixes up all the namespaces, puts it into one namespace.
Ah, yes.
Which was trickier than I thought it would be to do, because regular expressions are annoying. But I mean, someone like Devin or whatever can go and vet all of my, because Devin's very good at Git, right? So you can just go look at all my stuff and make sure that I didn't do anything crazy. And then before we actually submit all these things, because as part of that code format PR, we should also have a commit that merges all the namespaces into one. Right? So all the TR namespaces should be in one, and all the OMR namespaces should be in one, so that way you don't have that big.
I guess the other thing that probably should do, maybe from even some of the component people, is to look at some of the comments in the code may have been carefully constructed, like very engineered in terms of ASCII diagrams and that kind of thing. I wonder if we should, on the sample repo that you have, make sure that formatting in those comments makes sense. Because I think there's ways of there's pragmatism you can use to turn the formatting off, right?
Yeah, apparently.
So if there is something that needs to be protected from, I mean, obviously we can make some exceptions to the tool. So
I think most.
Well, you might want to, at least in the issue, make a summarization of what we're talking about here, but basically roll out the plan, and people should at least vet the comments in your repo in the next week or so.
I think most comments should be fine. I think it's any comment that's over 120, like if you wanted it to be that wide, that might be affected. But in terms of some of the trees and stuff that we've drawn, I don't think they would be affected.
Yeah, I thought there was it in data flow or something that's got some really involved diagrams? I don't remember what that was.
There's definitely some in
into the code anyway.
I think there's shared cache stuff also. Like we've drawn some things based on what this SCC does in OpenGenAI, but that's OpenGenAI. I don't know if there's anything in OMR that I've seen that's big, but it could be. So I mean, people who know where to look for could look at the comments and see. I updated the top level, like the description of the issue with the newer repo or the newer branch. that has these changes. So go to that.
Does that include the script for the namespaces?
Yeah, that's already.
Okay, I didn't look at that yet. I want to see that.
So
Okay.
the namespace, so like the issue description has like the links to the two repo, like a baseline without changes, which is just whatever.
Yeah.
And then the branch with the latest stable Clang plus the latest the updated description Clang format descriptor. And then below that are all the scripts, like the script to update the namespaces, the script to be a Git hook, so that you can just add it to your own OMR repo, and then it'll automatically format the code without you having to type Clang format. Every time you commit, it'll format it for you as part of the commit. That way you don't run into any weird like copyright issues about like Eclipse doing it and who's doing it on the GitHub side. You just do it on your own side.
Are you going to add these tools to the repo itself?
We can.
Well, you as well get them in.
I mean, a couple of
repo
them,
somewhere.
like the rebase helper is really just a one-time thing that I don't. You could put it in the repo, but like it's not a long-term. It's just they bridge people from free format to post format. The Git hook, sure, that could be part of the repo because that's an ongoing thing. All the other scripts are one-time things. There's only 3 scripts. Script to fix the namespace, which doesn't work in 100% in the sense that if you had OMR, OMR, TR, OMR, OMR, like it's not going to take all the OMRs and put it together. It still only looks for consecutive ones. So it's not perfect, but I'm not trying to over-engineer this thing. This was just to solve.
We can fix those up manually.
Yeah.
As we come across them too. There's not that many.
So like we can have people like Devin vet both the regular expressions and the Git stuff because he's clearly very strong at that. And then before we ever go through with it, but the plan is to just sort of get the Groovy in and then get the Groovy script in. I mean, first of all, we could start installing Clang format anyway we could start the process of installing Clang format on the machine that runs line ending tests because it's independent of when people decide this is okay. It has to be done anyways.
Can you do that, or does Adam
I have to ask Adam, I think. I don't think I have access to the machines directly. But if I tell Adam, hey, here's what I want, and can you please put this on the machine, I can at least find out the process of doing so, right? Because I'm sure, depending on whoever owns the machine, they may have that whatever policy is set for the machine that's doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's Travis CI, I assume it's whoever's owning that instance.
Okay.
All right. Other comments, feedback on this? Just, I don't want to start talking about it yet, but I'm thinking the OMR 0.3 release is, we're trying to do September 30th, so that's not going to interfere with this at all, so.
What was your, I mean, I know this is the next topic, but like, what was the cadence you were thinking? Was it quarterly?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, we could do it for 0.4 then.
Yeah, I mean,
for 0.4.
it'll be in the fourth quarter, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm saying we can like target for that and not try and go past. Like we can try and get the code formatting in this year unless people have some serious protection or issues or whatever.
Yeah. Meaning you don't have to rush in the next week and a half to, yes. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You could tell me and I'd be like, I'll try.
Yeah, and I want Mark to weigh in on this too. He's away today, but wanting to do that. But anyway, just want to turn the floor over to anyone else who has thoughts on this topic or ideas or suggestions.
Yeah, I'd recommend if you haven't already, just look at the repo and look at files you would normally touch and see what looks off. And if anything looks really off, like in terms of, oh man, I was used to looking at this carefully crafted set of conditionals, and now if I can't understand it at all, at least you can point that out. We can put pragmas there.
Okay, it's probably worth communicating this at least in the issue, but maybe even as a message on one of the Slack channels, the OMR Slack channel, just to say, read the issue. There's information there on this. This is what's happening.
I definitely did after the last time. I'll try again.
Okay. Okay. Well, if there's no other discussion on this topic, we can move on to another. I also learned that you can send all your regex related questions to Devin. So.
I don't know if he I haven't asked his
The
permission.
harder, the better.
Yeah, I haven't asked his permission for this, but I'm betting doesn't.
Okay. All right. So the 0.30 release, not really a lot to say about this other than the fact that our next quarterly, we were trying to do quarterly releases. The next one is due on September the 30th. So I think we're in fairly good shape for that. It's going to be a source-only release again. I don't think there'll be too much fanfare with it. We'll just basically take a snapshot at the end of next week, and that should be it. The builds themselves are looking reasonably good right now, so there's no reason not to do that. So I did create the release document at Eclipse already. So not expecting any surprises or anything like that. So just FYI, the 0.30 will be going out. And as we were just chatting here, 0.40 is scheduled for December 31st, but depending on people's availability, it might be a little bit earlier or possibly even into early January on that over the holidays. Any discussion anybody wants to have on the OMR release? Nope. Okay. And then the other topic that I wanted to mention is around GenAI code assistant contributions to the code base in OMR. So code assistant technology is now starting to be used more and more. And while we haven't seen any direct contributions to the OMR code base that apparently originate from a code assistant technology like Copilot or WCA, it might be coming in the future. So the question here is, this isn't really a proposal. It's really more just what should we do about it kind of question. The Eclipse Foundation does provide some guidance for committers on accepting GenAI produced code, and for the most part, it's fairly non-specific about what they recommend or what they want us to do. Essentially, what they're doing is they're kind of delegating it down to the projects to decide. And then they also make some suggestions about, making sure that people, when they're contributing code, they attribute AI, that AI was being used, to follow whatever corporate policies they happen to have, and other things about making sure the code is correct and that sort of thing. So not a lot of real specifics about actions that a particular project needs to take. But there are some things that we may want to do in a project like OMR, governing the use of AI contributions. The only thing that the Eclipse Foundation does say is that they want some acknowledgement of the fact that AI has been contributed to a file. So you would say after the copyright header, acknowledging that part of the file was generated by a code assistant, but beyond that, it's not specific at all. But from a project perspective, some of the things that we might want, some of the guidelines that we might want to put into place could be things like there are some corporations that require tags to be used on AI-generated content. And if those get contributed to an open source project, will the open source project respect them? They don't have to. It's just code like any other code. So, but we may choose to put a policy in place that says that if there's any tagging that's been added for AI, that as developers and contributors go about manipulating the code, we need to respect the scope of those tags and not, delete one of them and fold them away or what have you. So that's an example of the kind of policy that we may put in place for that. I don't expect if we have a statement around AI that this project would say a lot about it. I mean, it's just maybe putting a few guardrails in place to make sure that some of these basic rules are respected. So I'm thinking of maybe only just a couple of points, because I can't really think of anything else that we'd want to say in there, other than if people really wanted to ban it outright, and I don't think we can do that anyway, because the Eclipse Foundation is receptive of AI technologies in the contributions. So what I'm proposing to do here is really to start with an issue that I'll create in the OMR repo, and where some of these points can begin to be discussed. But certainly if people have thoughts on the matter right now, by all means, feel free to raise any points that you want to make on that. If not, there will be an issue where we can carry forward this discussion and hopefully get to the point where we have a short policy in place for OMR. Any thoughts that people want to bring up?
So the idea would be just having the comments kind of delimit what piece of code was influenced by AI.
So it depends, right? So the project itself OMR does not have to require that, but that is usually required by a corporation or something, where if you're going to provide code, it needs to be clearly marked out like that. What the project would maybe commit to do is respecting those and not having somebody go along and delete them, for example, right? Just making sure that those boundaries are respected. And of course, this code was generated by AI. Whatever that message is that the Eclipse Foundation wants us to use, that has to stay in the document as well.
How does this work long term, where say you have a piece of code that was generated by AI, then someone else realizes that this piece of code actually will match them perfectly somewhere else? They have to copy the entire comment section, or can they just take that piece of code and deduplicate it, or how does refactoring work? Because now you're taking this out, but you still have to respect the comments. Not to mention, if it goes in another file, does the header stay in the comment in the copyright? How does this?
I mean, I think answering the simpler part of that question, I think if you actually remove something that actually does have tags in it, then obviously you need to move the acknowledgement statement as well. I think taking part of that's getting into a bit of a gray area, perhaps.
I'm just curious as to, from a policy point of view, how we allow code to grow, but still somehow have these guardrails of sorts.
Yeah. I mean, if you're taking the substance of something that's already annotated as being generated by AI and you're reusing that, then I think you probably do need to propagate the tags. If it's 50 lines and you're taking one line out of that, I don't know. It's hard to say. That protection is there mainly for, I think, the contributor, and the tags are there mainly for the contributor or their corporation to give them some sort of protection or documentation on what has been contributed from AI. So if someone comes along to the project and lifts something out of that, again, there's an open source project. You can take whatever you want. There's no, as long as you're following the license of the project. Right? The license doesn't say anything about AI tags, so we don't need that. So that's a good kind of example that we might want to think about a bit. Maybe the way that we can structure some of this is to provide a few examples of situations, but I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to overthink this either, right? I don't want to put too many unnecessary guardrails in place if you don't have to.
I mean, something that could be done is like if you're hoisting code and moving it around, you could always just put a comment saying originally added in shop. And you go to the OMR shop projects, the repo shop, you could always go see and be like, this is AI. I'm talking about like if you're refactoring code. Like at some point you might have deduplication, you want to refactor code. But like as part of that, you have to remove code that was added by AI.
But on the other hand, I mean that's kind of what the source code. That's what Git is for, right? I mean,
I guess what I'm trying to say is at what point can we say, I don't need to respect these tags anymore? Like
if somebody really wanted to do the archaeology on it, you can look at Git and find out, oh, actually this did come from AI code at some point, so I have to attribute it. But I don't want to put we don't want to overburden developers, right? Because let's say some corporation requires that you delimit code, delimit AI code. You're putting a burden on everyone else to
right.
Want to lessen that as much as possible.
Yeah, I was also asking from the better point of view of like what is vetting, right? Like if I have to stop someone from doing something, am I allowed to allow someone to, hey, they found duplicate code, they want to remove it, but one of the versions is AI, one of the versions is not.
Yeah.
What do we do in that case? That's what I was sort of curious as to what is the problem? What do we think is going to happen in that case? What is something what is the accepted way of doing this?
On the Git side, do we want to add a rule that if you're committing something that some of it came from AI, like put a co-authored by WCA or something in the commit?
I think the Eclipse Foundation will say that any author on there has to be a human. Like a human has to contribute the code. So and they have to have signed the ECA. So a code assistant obviously cannot sign it.
Co-author might not be the best word, but we want to have something like just assisted by something in the Git commit that says there is AI.
Possibly, that might even be a question for Eclipse, right? As part of their contribution policy, whether or not they want to have that. So the idea there is really for us to track commits that have had some co-authorship with.
I think at some point that's the best you can do because as the code grows and changes, like let's just say someone used GenAI to generate like 3 lines of code, but in 5 years, more code was added as interspersed. Like how much of that is still GenAI and how much of that is human added now, right? Like so in that, like as it grows is the problem. I think any code that's left alone is an easy problem.
Yeah.
But any code that's not, I think the only way you can track it is by commit history.
Yeah, that would be something we look into. I mean, this is a per project kind of question, right? So
we also don't have to look at it from first principles, right? Like as though we're the only ones who have to face this. I mean, this is an industry-wide issue. Yeah. So there may be people out there who already have sensible guidelines that we should look into at least to get some ideas.
There are some licensing terms discussions going around using AI for this kind of open source projects. Only what's pilot is there as well.
Sorry, Rahel, was that you?
Yeah, I was asking, like in general, if there is any discussion in open source communities going on around licensing terms or policies using some of those assistant or
so I mean, in this particular case, I mean, I don't think it affects the license, at least according to the Eclipse Foundation. They haven't said anything about affecting the license, but it does affect copyright acknowledgement because you can't copyright AI generated content apparently. So you do need to acknowledge under the copyright header that there's parts of this file that are generated by AI. And that's all they seem to require from that. But licensing is all around the part of that is being driven by the contributor and the agreement that they have in place for that. So, but like Vijay was saying, I think we can look around at what other open source projects are doing to see how they are accepting code assistant technology, and see if we can maybe, if we have to adapt any of that to what we're doing here. I mean, a lot of our complications are around the tagging, right? And if tagging is a unique corporate requirement for whatever reason, then obviously we may find fewer examples of that out in the open, but but otherwise maybe just using the GitHub or Git history is sufficient to track some of this. Did you have a comment you wanted to make, Gavin?
Oh, no, I just wanted to be able to hear Rahil.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
There is one consideration about looking at the projects in that something like
there's a very loud noise on the line.
That was
Okay.
me trying to make it more audible for you.
Okay.
Obviously, it failed miserably.
All right, thanks.
all right. There is one consideration to take about when looking at the project in that, like something like Linux, which is GPL, has less of a problem caring about where the code is coming from because it's GPL. Whereas we may not want GPL code coming. If we don't, if code generated by GenAI is not being signed, that thing doesn't sign the ECA or anything.
But ultimately, that comes down to the author that's actually doing the submission. They have signed the ECA, and they've said that none of their contributions, like they are the appropriate author of this code. So,
okay.
Yeah, I don't think we have to go down that.
Okay.
Any other thoughts that anybody has on our AI overlords? Okay. I mean, if not, I mean, like I said, I'm going to create an issue where this discussion can begin, and it's not going to go on for too long, but at some point we're going to reach some kind of conclusion where we'll likely have a very brief policy statement for the project on what we want to do. All right, so if there's no other discussion on that, I guess we can move on. And that actually was our last topic. So that's all we have for this week. And our next call will be in 2 weeks' time. So thanks, everyone, for calling in today. And talk to you in a couple of weeks.